Welcome. My name is Rob Ainscough. This is part 2 of the GoFlight interface tool tutorial. It's been about 18 months or so since I did part 1 of this tutorial. So I'm going to start off from where I left off from part 1. So today we're going to cover the knobs. In this particular case, I am referencing the Rex Milviz weather radar. This is a add-on you can add to various aircraft, and the GoFlight interface tool has the capabilities of interfacing with add-ons, and this is no exception. Of course, some add-ons may or may not be viewable or detectable, but in this particular case, the Rex Milviz folks have made their weather radar accessible. So let's go ahead and start mapping some of our GoFlight modules to the controls on the weather radar. For this example, I'm going to stick to a RP48, GoFlight RP48, and we're going to map essentially all the functionality here, from the range to the gain to the test switch to the dial of the tilt angle of the radar, to an RP48 dials and buttons. So let's go ahead and get started doing that. Just, in case you're interested, this aircraft is T-50 Bobcat. You can see here I've set up default weather just so that I could pick it up on the weather radar. As you can see here, got some stormy weather. I am doing this video in 1080. I know a lot of people were having a hard time reading the tiny text. That's because I was using 4K resolution, which is 3840 by 2160, and that resolution text is going to seem very small if you're viewing it from a 1080p or a 1440p monitor. So today I thought, to make it a little bit easier on your eyes, I did this in 1080p. The latest version of GoFlight interface for Prepare 3D 64-bit running. I believe this is identified as version 3.5.0, and you can purchase this from Polypot Software. I went over that in the first video, so I'm not going to go over it here again. Like I said, it's an excellent tool, so I highly recommend you go purchase a version, because it will essentially bring all your GoFlight gear to life, and you can program just about anything from it. So okay, let's get on with part 2 here. I've got the GoFlight interface tool running. The first thing we're going to do is go into Detective. That's going to bring up our detective box here. I'll try and move it so it doesn't overlap so much. Alright, so here we are in the detective. This is a little bit different from the part 1 I did over 18 months ago. Steve has been busy making changes, adding a lot of enhancements. I'm not going to go over all the enhancements, but let's suffice it to say there are quite a few. I have previously to this, I had already defined a lot of the T-50 functionality, but today I'm going to go ahead and start fresh as though I haven't done this already. Plus there are some different features available in this version of the GoFlight interface tool which are better than what I was doing in the prior version of this. So I want to make sure I cover those and include how to use the various new features. Alright, so the detective looks similar. The different color backgrounds, different color buttons, and there are some new features like a switch and case, which are very, well, I think they're very important. I use them frequently. It saves a lot of time in programming. There's also a nice function here called call, which you can set up your bespoke event and then just call that event, and that event could be a series of things. So you can create bespokes here with multiple actions, and then create a new one that will call that single bespoke reference to execute those actions. So it helps you reuse particular elements, and helps you kind of separate your elements out into their individual components. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. This is what we're going to be programming today. I've already made labels for this because I use it for different aircraft. It's basically my weather radar module. I'll use this in several aircraft, from Milviz to Majestic to PMDG, you name it. It has the fairly similar layout to what you see on the Milviz Rex weather radar. We have a WRX tilt, WXR tilt, WXR gain, WXR range, WXR brightness, which, as you can see, are fairly similar to what we have here. Here's our tilt, here's our gain, here's our range. Going to map those to this module here, and the switching element here we're going to map to the various buttons over here. Like the off will actually be the on button. Then we'll have test, which will match the test over here. We'll have WX, which will match this WX button, WX plus thunderstorms, which will max that button, and then the map mode. So I'll show you how to get those all mapped out also. Alright, so we start off in detective here like you normally would. There's some things down here which are kind of neat and fairly useful. These are newish features. And then we've got our standard scrolling view, and then we have our fixed view, and I'll get into that. It does it like a count value on how many events recur, and then we have fixed view sorted by time, which basically shows you the number of events that happened over time, and it will show you the most recent events at the top. That could be very handy in isolating events quickly. But we'll start off in our scrolling view here. We'll turn on the events toggle, turn on the LVARs toggle, and we start getting a whole bunch of data. I'll do my usual routine where I go through the motion of the yoke and any axis type controls I have, like rudders, brakes, throttle, props, fuel, and anything else that's axis related. So it triggers the event, and even motion events, so we can trigger those. So now we've got our events, our axis events triggered. I'm going to go ahead and go over here, select undetected for events, check that, check the hide these events. So those events are now hidden, and you'll see the button change here to indicate they're hidden. And we'll go to LVARs, do the same thing, click on detected, check up here, all the detected events are now selected, and I'll go ahead and hit hidden. I hide them, and as soon as I hide them, you'll notice this list stops here. Now there may still be a few events that are being triggered later on over a timed basis that may pop up here, but that's okay. For now, we just want to get rid of all the extraneous events we don't need. This is the very same process as we did in part 1. So there's nothing new here to be learned, but just a refresher. So now let's go ahead and go into Prepared 3D here and start. We're going to start with turning the radar on and see what events happen. So let's go ahead and move this into the test position. As you notice here, we got a LVR mode select, WX radar mode select, LVR data 1. So this is telling us what LVR happened when we made this particular event. In this case, it was this one. Now you can I'd like to just hit the clear scrolling view here. I'll just clear out the view, so make it a little bit easier. Make sure I see something that pops up that's unexpected. Now, once we're here, I like to go into the fixed view. There's a couple of reasons for the fixed view is because Steve has added some nice features where you can just right-click and hide LVRs that pop up that you're not interested in, or you can double-click an LVR that comes up and it'll automatically go over here, fill it out, and search for that particular value, which makes it easier for you to locate and then use in a bespoke event. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and code the off test WX, WXT, and map functionality. So let's first thing let's create a bespoke event. As I mentioned before, I like to use underscore, and then usually the aircraft identifier. In this case, I'm just going to say T50, and then underscore, and then the particular event that I'm doing. Since these are weather radar related, I'm going to say WX underscore off, and then hit the check. Okay, so we have the WX off here. As you can see, we don't know what that mode's going to be right now because we're already in the off state. So just leave this blank for now, and I'm going to go ahead and create another one called T50 underscore WX test. Okay, so this is going to be the test. When we switch the main mode here over to test, we want to capture that event. So we're in our fixed view here. What should happen, actually what we really want to do is fixed view with auto scrolling of time. This will show you the most recent event at the top. So let's go ahead and go into Prepared 3D, and let's set this over to test, and voila, notice we have a test WX radar mode select 1 here. So now we can double click this and it will automatically show and be searched over here, and then we just highlight this and we say, okay, this is going to be our text mode, so let's go ahead and set this LVAR value to what we see over here, which is 1. Let's put in value 1. Okay, so we've got that mode set to WX radar mode select 1. Now there are a couple of things that we don't see here, which we will need to do, and the reason I know this is because I've done it. If we go back to our scrolling view here, notice we have an event 081923. This event is a forward motion event for this particular switch or rotary knob. As we go forward, you'll see an event 081923. If we go backwards, then we get an event of 081922. And also notice the weather radar mode select set to 0. So let's go ahead and we'll go forward, 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 and notice you can see all the modes selected here, and that's the forward event. Now if we go backwards in these modes, backwards, we see it's 018922 to back to the off state. This is pretty much all captured everything we need in order to program those modes. So let's go back to our test mode here. And again, if you go to fixed view with auto scrolling, you'll see here it only shows the LVARs. And that's all this view is supposed to do. It's only supposed to show the LVARs. So we'll go back to our scrolling view, and we'll take this information we've got here now that we've captured, and we need to decide what we're going to do with forward or backward motion when we hit this test button. Now that's going to take some fairly tricky logic. Now since I've already cheated on this and I've already programmed this before, I'm going to bring up my prior logic, which is let me see, mode test. Here we go. Okay, so as you can see in my mode test, which I'd done earlier, there's quite a bit of additional code here to handle the sending of the 81923 or the 81922. Again, these are basically motion events that need to happen. If I didn't do these events, it would set the radar mode, but you wouldn't see the knob move. So in order to do this, we're going to have to set the logic up for every single possible combination relative to where the knob currently is at. Now that sounds complicated. It's not that bad, but as you can see, all this code here, what I'm doing is if weather radar mode is 0, that means if it's off, and don't forget we're trying to do this in the context of selecting tests, go to 0. Go to 0 means, okay, we're off. This is going to say send to 819223, which is a forward motion animation for this control to make it move, visually move over to test. And then it's going to say go to exit. And in exit here, this is the exit label, we have it setting the actual weather radar mode. Now you can handle this with the way I did it, like this, with a lot of labels and a lot of go-tos. But we may actually have it, now that we have access to this switch and case statement, we have a bit more flexibility on how we can structure this whole bunch of code here. So let's go back to our original mode test. Where is that? There we go. This is the one we're setting up from scratch. Alright, so we're going to need a bit more than just setting the WX mode to 1. We need to know where we are relative to be able to set that. And again, we're doing this because we're programming the buttons over here, so the buttons can use when I press the test, it will know, okay, this is where I am, and relative to where I am, how do I get to where I need to be? So let's go ahead, and it's probably easier here to use a switch statement and the case. So let's go ahead and start a switch. And this is going to be switch based on the mode select here. Okay. So let's move this to the top. And then we're going to say case, and that's going to be the value of the weather of the WX radar mode select. So case. All right. So if it's 0, remember we're trying to set this for test. So that's the position we're trying to get to, is test. So we have to know, okay, if we're at 0, which is the off position, we have to know what to do. So case 0, we want, let's go back to the detected events here. Remember this event here, based on this information, is the forward event, forward animation. This is backwards animation. So let's go ahead and assuming we're on a test case here, assuming we're on 0, off here, so we've got weather radar mode 0, which is off. Then we want to move forward 1 notch, and we want to be in weather radar mode 1. So case is we're in the off position, and we want to be in the test position. So weather radar mode select 1 is correct. But now we need to add a forward event here. So let's go ahead and send this particular event. And I believe the value is 0 for these. Yep, all these events are 0. Let's go ahead and set this to 0. Okay, let's move this up. I don't know if the order is important here, but let's just have the animation happen and then the actual mode select happen. So now we have to, okay, so now we've got the case where we're at the off position and we want to be at the test position. That will get us to the test position. So let's go down here. Now we need to say, okay, well, what if I'm already at the test position and I want to be at the test position? You do nothing. So in that particular case, you just leave it. You don't make any changes. So we'll ignore case 1 since that's where we want to be. Now case 2, let's suppose we're here, which is going to be weather radar select mode 2. Okay, and how do we know that? Because we have that information over here. Remember when we sequence through it, we got the LVAR data for the mode. So WX mode is 2. All right, so now we say, okay, switch. If I'm at mode, if I'm here on WX, which is 2, then I need to go backwards 1 and set the mode to 1. Now let's go ahead and do that. So we want this event. This is the backwards event. 0 is fine. So we're going to go back 1, and we want this mode to be 1. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to modify this later, but for now I'm just trying to keep it visually simple. So let's go ahead and set the weather radar mode to 1 because that's what we want to be at. Over here we can actually just pause this because we've got all the data we need here. We don't need to look at it anymore. So let's go ahead and okay, we've set that to 1. We've gone backwards. So now this is basically saying we're at the WX mode because we're case 2. So we want to go back 1 notch to the test mode because remember we're setting this up for a test button. So we want to go back to 1-notch test mode, and this 81922 is the backwards motion, and that's setting the weather mode, radar mode to test again. So now we proceed. Now let's suppose we're in WXT mode. So that's going to be case 3. So we say case, and we say 3, and we hit OK. And there we are, case 3. Okay, so case 3 is saying, okay, if we're in this mode, if this is already in WXT mode, we want to get back to test over here. Remember, we're pressing a button, not a dial. So we're going to go back 1, 2 places to get back to test. So to get back 2, we need to send 2 of these. So let's go up to here, and oops, let's go up to here and say send 0, send 0. Okay, so now we're saying, okay, we're going back. And let's go ahead and do the LVARs again, set that to 1. Okay, so if we're case 3, we're at WXT, we're going back 2, and then we're setting the mode to test. Fair enough. Now, case 4. Okay, so case 4 means that we're over on the map mode here, and we want to go back 1, 2, 3 positions to test mode. So we do what we did before. We go, we send our 192 here, and 0 is fine. And we do another one. 0 is fine. And a third one. 0 is fine. Okay, so what do we have? There we have it. So we're going back 3, 1, 2, and 3. This will go back 1, 2, and 3. And now we want to go ahead and set the mode again. So we'll go ahead and set that to 1. And there we go. And that covers all the possible positions we could be in order to get back to test. But remember, this is the test bespoke event here that we're trying to set up. So now I set this up so it doesn't matter where I am on this dial here. If I hit the test button, it's going to bring me to that test point and set the radar in that mode. All right, so let's go ahead and end our switch. We started our switch up here. Switch, radar mode select. So we're going to end our switch down here and switch. All right, so that's logic is now all self-contained. Well, I don't want to say self-contained, but so now in a switch case, in a switch statement, you come here, you say, okay, mode select. All right, and if I'm 0, that means I'm off. I want to go to test, so I need to go forward 1 and set the radar mode to test. Now, you could since we're always setting the radar mode to test, radar mode to 1, select to 1, we could technically take each one of these out of each case statement and put them at the end. And that would save us a few extra lines of code. And it's safe to do that because even if you were already in test mode, all you'd be doing is setting yourself back to test mode again. So that's not a big problem. So let's go ahead and do that because it'll save us a few lines of code here. So we're gonna put in at the end after the switch statement, because in every case we want to be in this mode. So after the switch statement, we go set mode 1. There we have it. WX radar mode 1. Okay, so now let's go ahead and remove these because we don't need them because we've got it at the end here. And we'll go say delete highlighted task. here, and delete that one. Here, delete that one. And here, delete that one. Okay, so we've optimized this code a little bit, removing additional statements we didn't need, because we're always going to want to be, for test mode, it's going to be radar mode select 1. These case statements are then just operating on moving the positioning back and forth. So let's go ahead and save this. Export bespoke events. It's a good idea anytime you've created a bespoke event that you export it. It'll ensure that it's saved, because if something crashes, you could lose a lot of work. So let's just go ahead and save this. This is for the entire aircraft, and these are all the bespoke events. In my case, I put them all in here. I'm going to hit save. And it says, do you want to replace? And I'll say yes. Okay, so we've got that set up. Now, well, how do we test it? And so let's go ahead and set it up the test button, or I should say map it to the test button on the RP48. Let's go back over here. Let's go back to RP48. That's my device. It's enabled. My test button is actually the third button from the right. So let's go ahead to that button. There we go. So now I'm going to test. I'm going to set this up to the button event on. Scroll up. Like I said in my other video, I tend to do underscore to put my aircraft specific bespoke events at the top. In this case, though, I have a, what do I have? It's a T50. Okay. In this case, they showed up in the end. Alright, so this is what we're looking for. That's the test button. That's the bespoke we just created over here. So let's go ahead and set it. As far as the light data, you can probably search, you can probably use the weather radar mode select for the actual light data. Oh, I should say there's more. It's a handy feature here now. There's a search option, and hopefully we can just say, hopefully we just copy this. Go over here, paste it in, and hit the search, and there it is. Yay. Okay, so we can quickly select our light data also. Now we're going to have to make some assumptions here. We want the light to be on. I want it to be on because we're doing a test here. We know that test case is 1. So let's say on when that is a value of 1. Alright, so that's the test button. So let's just go ahead to our GoFlight module here. Okay. And let's go ahead and hit the test button and see what happens to the actual weather radar. Oh, look at that. It comes on. Don't know what these buttons are. I must have had those programmed somewhere else, but I'll clear those out. So there's the test button. That's test radar. And we should be able to go in here and move to a different position. Doesn't matter what. And hit the test button. And that should always take us back to that test position. And sure enough, it does. Now we basically want to repeat this process for each option, for each mode of the weather radar. So off WX, WXT, and map. And what we're going to do is keep in mind our reference point. So if we go over to WX now, let's do the WX one. Let's create a new bespoke event over here. Another quick tip here is I like to copy these, and a quick way to do that is to use the copy feature here. Go ahead and copy this event, this test event, and we're going to call this one WX and hit OK. And now we have another bespoke event as a copy of the test event. So we want the same basic structure, but since there are a few differences relative to where we're going to be, we want to make those changes. Since we know that WX mode is 2, that's going to be our reference point. So if we want WX mode 0, which is off, and this is case 0 here, we're going to want to move backwards 1, 2 positions. So we don't want to move forwards, which is what this one is, so we'll go ahead and remove that. And we want to move backwards 2. So this is the backwards event. Let's do 2 of these. Send 0, send 0. Alright, so if we're at WX2 or radar select mode 2, we want to if we're currently at off and we want to be at WX2, then that means we come in here. If case is 0 off, then we're going to go ahead and go forward. Okay, so we're trying to get to WX, and that's what we're defining here as the WX button. So if we're at the off position, which should be case 0, we need to move forward 2 spots. Okay, so to move forward, we know the forward event is 81923. So this is a forward event. So let's go ahead and send 2 of these with a value of 0. Oops, and it was actually added to the wrong section here, so let me move it down into the case 0 section. Alright, so if this is off, then we move forward 2 to get to the WX. We're going to need to change this to case 1 because we need to know what we should do if we're at the test position. So let's change this, edit it to case 1. So we'll go and edit here, and rather than 2, let's go case 1. And remember, case 1 is radar mode test. Okay, so case 1 is radar mode test. We want to move forward 1 position to WX. Remember, that's where we want to be. So let's get rid of this, and let's add a forward position, and event data is 0. Alright, so we're moving forward 1 spot now. Remember, this is if we come in from a test position, we want to move forward 1 spot. Now we're not going to do case 2 because case 2 is what we want. WX is the position we want, so and that's where we're trying to get. So there's no need to do a case 2. Again, this is just following the same logic as the WX test. We're just shifting or identifying relative motion forward and backward to that particular knob position or selector position. So case 3 would be WXT, and we'd want to go backwards 1 to WX, because that's what we're trying to aim for. So case 3 here, we've got a backwards 1. So for case 3, which would be, again, 0, 1, 2, 3, would be WXT. So that would be our reference point. Okay, so we're here at WXT. We need to go back one to WX. In this case, we've got it backwards already, so we've got two of them. We only really need one of them. So we're going to go ahead and delete one of them. There you go. So now that should work for that case 3. Now, case 4 is if we were at the map position and we want to get back to WX, we're going to go back 2 positions, 1, 2. Here we've got 3 positions to find, but we only need 2, so let's go ahead and delete one of them. Okay. And that covers all the cases. Now the mode we want to be in for WX is mode 2. Remember, that's 0, mode 1, mode 2. So let's go ahead and edit this and change it to 2. Alright, remember this is outside of the switch, so it means this is always going to happen no matter what, which is fine. Even if we're in WX mode, that's okay. And the switch statement here is really just governing the knob motion forward or backward relative to where it's at. Alright, so now that we've got this defined, go ahead and let's do an export. Save our work. Save. Say yes. And let's get back over here to assigning the bespoke to the button on the RP48. So this is the WX button we're trying to define here. And in my case, if we look over here, the WX button is the second button from the left, which would be this button here. So let's go ahead and assign that to my bespoke I've created for WX. That's this one. Leave this as nothing. There's no off event. This is a simple button state. A single state, I should say. Either you turn it on or move it, and that's that. For light data, we'll go ahead and do what we did before, which is basically copy this, Control C, click your search here. Oh, we already have a search for the prior one. Hit search, finds it, select it, and we say, okay, this light is going to go on when this value is going to be 2, because that's the value of the WX radar mode select for WX is 2. Okay, so we've got that button done. Let's just go ahead and verify that button is working. Let's just put this into an off state. And let's go over to our RP48 here and go ahead and hit the WX button. And voila. Notice that the LED lights up, so we got our light value correct as well. And the button moved to WX mode, and the radar is showing the appropriate mode. Okay. So now we're just going to keep repeating this for all the other modes here. Let's go ahead and do one for create a new bespoke. Oh, let's just go back up here. What I forgot to mention here, after you assign any button or any rotary or any of the items in here, I would recommend you go over to the appropriate export and export them. And then hit save. It's just good practice, like I said, just in case something crashes, you'll have a good reference point. I mean, you don't lose all your work. Okay, so let's go ahead and tackle WXT. Actually, we're just going to tackle the rest of them here. Copy what I have, and then call it something different. And then go through here and just modify what I need to modify. Again, this is, I want to be at the WXT. That's where our primary, where we're trying to get to. It's just saying where we're coming from, basically. So case 0 would be coming from the off, means we want to go ahead forward 1, 2, 3. As we know, this is the 81923 is the forward. So let's add another one of these. There we go. So we got 3 forwards, 1, 2, and 3. And now this is again where we're coming from 1, which would be test. We'd want to go forward 2. So we're going to need to add another one here. We've already got that highlighted, so do that. There's the event, added another forward event. So we've got this, the off and test. Okay, so now let's say we're coming from WX. We need to edit this, change it to 2, because that's our WX reference from position. And this we need to move forward 1. This is set to backwards 1, so we want to delete that. And we want to go ahead and send a forwards 1. And there we go, we've got our forwards 1. Now this is where we want to be, so case 3 we don't need to do, since it's the same as the bespoke event we want to be at, so we don't need to do anything, because if we're already there, there's nothing to do. Case 4 means we're here, and we need to go backwards to here. We go from map back to WX2. So 922 is the backwards event, that's correct, but we don't need 2 of them, we need just 1 of them. Let's go ahead and delete 1 of them. Alright, and then the mode select for WXT is going to be 3. That's 0, 1, 2, and 3. So let's go ahead and edit that and call that 3 and hit OK. So that was WXT done. Now do the same thing for map. Actually, first thing I do, let's back it up, save, yes, go over here, assign it to my WXT button, which is going to be the 3rd button from the left for me. So this is going to be the 3rd button from the left. You could also do a search here, similar to doing a search here. So I could say underscore underscore T50 underscore WX underscore WXT and do search, and it'll find it. Hit OK. Same thing for the data. We already know that what data is going to be, so search. It's already pre-selected there for us, which is handy. And then let's say on, and the value for WXT is 3. That's the mode. And let's go over here, export and save. Oops. Export and save to the right directory. Save. That's gonna say yes. All right. Okay. There we go. Okay, so we've got that assigned. Let's go ahead and do the map button. Again, copy. Name this map. Hit the OK. And go through and edit our values here. So again, this is where we want to be. Case 0 means this is where we're currently at. Okay, so we've copied our WXT over to a map, and now we're going to repeat the process. So here we are. We want to be in map mode. We're currently in the off mode. So what we want to do is we want to go forward 1, 2, 3, 4 positions. 81923 is a forward, so we need to add 1 more. Okay, so forward 1, 2, 3, 4 positions. All right, case 1. Let's say we're in test mode, and we want to get to map mode, so we're going to go forward 1, 2, 3 positions. So again, we want to add 1, and there we have it, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so case 2, which would be the WX mode, we want to move forward 1, 2. So this one we need to add 1 more again. And let's add 1 more. There we go. Alright, so case mode 3. We do need that, so we need to edit this since we're not going to need case mode 4, which is the destination mode. So let's go ahead and change this to 3. So that's case mode 3, and we're going to want to move forward 1, not backwards. This is backwards, so let's delete that. And let's go ahead. Yep, 23 is selected. Send 0. Okay, so we're going to move forward from WXT to map. And we don't need a case 4 because case 4 is the map mode, so map to map. Now let's go ahead and set the mode select. This is again 4, number 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let's go ahead and edit that and make that 4. And hit OK. So that's got the map mode selected. Let's go back up and assign that to a button. My map mode button is fourth one from the left. So let's go ahead and set that button. Map. And actually, let's do a search for data. That, and then we want to set on with value of 4. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and export this. Set it. Yes. I actually forgot to export this event over here, so let's go ahead and do that. Again, this step is really just a precaution. It's not required. Just in case something happens, you don't lose all your work. Alright, so now we have those buttons mapped. We need to do the last button, which is the off position. So let's go ahead and copy our Ainscough here, and I'm going to call it off. Actually, I think we already have an off. So I'm going to call this on off. Although it's technically really only off here. Let's go back a bit here. Call it. Oops. Off 1. There we go. Because if you notice in here, I actually already have WX off, which we're not using. I didn't fill it out. I started this early on, and there's no sense in filling this out because it was an off position. So let's go ahead and delete this. And let's go back to our off 1. Alright, so in off 1 we want to go ahead and update the code here relative to where we want to be and where we're coming from. Since we want to be at off, and case 0 again, it would be itself, so there's really no point in having any code here. So we'll go ahead and delete all 4 of these items. Now we can change this to, let's just go ahead and edit this value and call it 1, because again we don't want case 0, and we're going to have to edit these values, these case values down here also, but for now let's just leave them. So case 1, it means that we're coming from test to off, so we're going backwards 1, and this I believe is the backwards. So let's go ahead and send a backwards event for case 1. Let's go to case 2. Let's edit this. And for case 2, we want to go backwards 1 and 2. So let's get rid of these. These are forward events. And let's go ahead and add a backward event to 1 and and add another backward event. Okay. So case 2 for here, we're going to go back 1 and 2. This should be case 3, so let's edit this. Make this case 3. And case 3 means that we're coming from WXT, so we're going to want to go backwards 1, 2, and 3 events. These are forwards, so we don't want those. Let's get rid of those. And let's add the backwards events. Send 1, send 2, send 3. Okay. Oops. Seem to be missing one. Let's do that again. Don't know what happened to that. Maybe I put it down here. Never mind. There it is. Up 1. There we go. So, case 3, which is 0, 1, 2, 3. We need to go back 1, 2, 3 to off. So we go backwards 1, 2, 3. All right, let's edit this case and make this 4. And case 4 is if we're on the map, we want to go back 1, 2, 3, 4 to the off. Okay. So this is 4. We don't want that. Delete that. We want 4 of these. So let's go ahead and do 1, 2, 3, and 4. These got kind of mixed up, so let's just shift them up. I don't know why, but alright, so there we go. So case 4, we're going to go backwards 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the mode we want, let's edit this, is going to be 0, which is the off mode. Alright, so now we've got all possibilities assigned here. We've got off, test, WX, WXT, and map. Go ahead and export these and save. And let's go back over to here. In my case, for off, I'm actually using, I call it on my RP48. It's labeled on, but this is essentially the on-off button. So it's the furthest to the right. So let's go ahead and assign that button. To off 1. Interesting, that was deleted. Okay, off 1. And then go ahead and do the search. Okay. And on when the value is 0. Okay. So now I've defined these 5 states, selector modes, as buttons. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 selector modes, and I have 5 buttons here. Got the on, the test, the map, WXT, and WX. Let's go over here and make sure they're all mapped. Yep, WX, WXT, map, test, and off. Okay. So now, let's export this. Okay, so now everything is defined for the selector here. And we can test that out. Let's go ahead and set this to off. That's good. Let's go ahead and set to test. That's good. Let's go WX. That's good. WXT. That's good. And map. That's good. Now we can go directly to any particular one of these modes. Doesn't have to be the one next to it. You know, I can go straight to off, and it should have logic for off, or I could go straight to map, it should have logic for map, or I can jump to WX, it should have logic for WX. Okay, so that concludes mapping a selector to buttons. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to doing the tilt functionality, the radar tilt functionality, and the tilt knob is over here. And as you can see, if we move this tilt knob up or down, we get a bunch of events over here. And as you can see, moving the tilt up, we have a WX radar tilt event, and it increments by 0.5. And if we tilt it down, it then decrements by negative 0.5. And that's a WX radar tilt. So we want to take that information we've got. Actually, what we want to do now is we want to tilt it to its maximum values. So let's go to the negative as far as we can go. As we can see here, we have a WX radar tilt negative 15. That's its maximum. And let's do its let's do its upper tilt right angle. And as you can see here, we're at radar tilt positive 15. So those are the two negative and positive 15 angles or degrees that you can tilt your radar. And now what we need to do is, once we know that, we need to set up a increment and decrement bespoke. So let's go ahead and we'll create a new one. I'm going to call this underscore T50 underscore WX tilt underscore inc. This is going to be our increasing option. Okay, so now what do we want to do? We want to say, okay, well, we've got the radar tilt here, and we want to increment it by 0.5 every time we move the knob. So what we're going to do is we can actually, I believe, let's go to the fixed view. Hasn't registered in here. Interesting. Here, let's go ahead and do this again. There we go. There's a good point here, is that it's good to know that when you're doing the if you want to see the L bars show up in the fixed view with the sort on time, then when you switch to that view, you actually need to go back into the sim and make that particular function happen so that you can see it show up at the top here. And as in our other example, if we double click on this, it'll do an automatic search and we'll have our radar tilt there. Okay. So when we want to do an increment, that means we want to do a positive tilt. So let's go ahead and do a set plus here. The set plus means it will increment it by whatever value you specify. So let's click on set plus, and we want to increment it by 0.5, 0.5. Okay, so now we've got our ink set to 0.5. That's all fine and dandy, but we need to be able to control the maximum increment value. And if we go back to here, our scrolling view, well, we see all the events. We go back to our scrolling view, and like we mentioned before, we have maximum values of 15. Here we go. Yeah, for negative 15 tilt angle to a maximum of positive 15 tilt angle, which is, where did I put that? It's in here somewhere. Here we go. So yeah, positive, maximum positive of 15. So when we're setting this increment up, we have to make it aware that it can't go beyond 15 as far as the tilt angle is concerned. So in doing that, we need to set up some kind of logic to prevent that from happening. Now there's multiple ways you can do this. You can do an if statement. We want the increment to happen if the WX radar tilt is less than the value of 15. Because once it hits 15, we don't want to be incrementing anymore. So let's put in an if statement. So we say if not equals, we want to select if the value is less than 15, if the value is less than 15, we do next. And the next would be to increment. So let's move this down to here. Okay, so if the WX radar tilt value is less than 15, then we do a next, and this next will be to increment. If it's greater than 15, it will skip this and it will not increment. So that should control what we can do with the increment here. Now we need to manage the decrement. But for testing, let's go ahead and just test the event and see what happens. With any luck, it should move that dial forward. Oh, and yes it does. You can see the dial slowly moving forward. You can see the values incrementing over here. And this is by pressing the Test Bespoke Event button over here. So that's good. And once we get to 15, it shouldn't do anything. So let's just keep hitting the event. Oh, and sure enough, once we're at 15, it stops. No more event. So that's good. So we've got our increment working there on the tilt. Now we need to set up the opposite, which is the decrement value. So we want to go ahead and add a new bespoke event. We can probably copy this, but it might make more sense to actually just create a new one. And here's a trick I do when I'm copying is rather than well, because I'm so lazy at typing, I just hit the rename here. I highlight it, I hit Control C, I hit OK. So I don't really rename it to anything different. Now I don't know if this causes any problems. It doesn't usually, but sometimes it might. It's a quick way of just copying the bespoke event, or I should say the bespoke name. So when I hit the add button here, I'm going to just go Control V, which will paste it. And rather than increment, I'm going to say decrement, DEC. Hit the OK button, and now I've got a new bespoke event. So for decrement, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to reduce by 0.5. So we use the set minus here, and we put a negative. We don't put a negative sign in front of it. We just say 0.5. And then OK. So this is going to decrement the radar tilt value by 0.5 every time. So it'll start bringing this back down. Now we're going to have to again put in the same kind of logic we put in for the increment, because we don't want to go beyond a value of negative 15. So we'll put in the if logic and say if. In this case, if the value is greater than negative 15, so we were saying here, if the WX radar tilt is greater than negative 15, remember negative 14, 13, negative 12, these are all greater than negative 15. then go ahead and do the next statement. Do the next step. So we need to move this down because we want that to be the next step. So if the radar tilt is greater than -15, then go ahead and allow it to tilt down, or go another -0.5. If it's not, then we just don't do anything. Fair enough. So let's go ahead and we'll test this bespoke event. Now this should start moving the dial downwards as I click on the bespoke event test. And sure enough, there it does, moving back to -15. Now, if you notice, let's go back over here. I'm moving this around, and this value here is changing. When we are doing this, the value was not changing. Okay. Because we're missing, once again, an event. For the decrement event, we're moving backwards here. You can see over here on the scrolling view that we have 081924. This is the decrement, or the backwards animation event that we're going to need as part of our decrement process here. Okay, well, that should be easy enough, right? Well, a couple of things you have to consider here is this if statement is if do this, then next do that, and then it just continues. So because we've got nothing after it, that's fine, it can continue. But this one is if next, and then else next skip. So if it was less than this value, the next skip would bring you down to the line after this. So what does that mean? Why do I care about that? Well, because we need this 81924 event, we're going to have to add it to our decrement process here, and the value is 0. So we're going to do a send, and we're going to move the radar tilt a negative degree. So this is not going to work, because if the value is not less than 15, it's going to do a next skip. So it's still going to continue to decrement the tilt value beyond -15. Because the next skip means it'll skip this, it'll execute this. So what we have to do is we're going to have to create some labels and use some go-tos. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's create a label. Let's call this dec for decrement. And then let's call another one. Let's just call them exit, which basically means or skip. Either one. Exit. Okay, so now we have an exit here. And why do we want these two labels? Well, because if we're going to do a next skip, we're going to need these labels. So, now, okay, we're going to need a couple of more pieces here. But first, let's get these statements into the deck section. So let's go ahead and move it up, and let's move this one up. Okay, so we've got a label and we've got a decrement value, and then we have an exit. So here we say if the WX radar tilt is greater than -15, go ahead and do the next statement. that would be this deck. That's just a label. We don't want that. So we're going to have to add a go-to. And the go-to, you're going to have a choice between your two labels you created. So I'm going to say go-to deck. Okay, so that means if this is greater than -15, meaning like this value here, -3, is greater than -15, go ahead and execute this statement here. And that's going to say go to deck. Now, what if it isn't that? What if it is at 15 already and we don't want to do this? So that's going to go next skip, and that's going to go to this decrement label here, and it's still going to continue to decrement it. We don't want that. So we're going to need another go-to over here. And this one, we're going to say go to exit. So if WX radar tilt is greater than -15, go ahead and decrement. So that's going to execute this statement, and that's going to say go to deck, and it's going to go to this label here, and it's going to execute this. If it's equal to 15, equal to -15, or negative, above -15, like -16, then the next skip is going to be executed, and that's going to say go to exit. So that's going to go to exit, and it's going to do nothing, which is going to prevent the value from getting higher than -15. Now we're still not done, because if we do decrement, we get to this decrement label here, and we execute this statement, and then we just exit and fall out. We've got the decrement set up here to do what we need it to do. Now I'm going to give you an alternate way of doing this decrement also, and that's using the call statement. What we can do is create a bespoke that has just these two values in it. And let's go ahead and do that. Yeah, so what are we going to call it? Okay, well, not really sure, but let's just go ahead and copy this one. And we'll call this, let's just say call. Okay, so I've copied that event. I've got a WX tilt deck call. What I want to here is actually I want to remove all this logic here. Remove that. Remove the exit. Remove that. And remove this exit. So now I've got a bespoke event called tilt deck call, and it does these two things. This will decrement the animation and make sure that this value gets decremented in the actual scope, and it will set the WX radar tilt value also, decrement that by 0.51. Alright, so that sounds good. We've got our call statement. Now we want to go back to our decrement bespoke, this one, and rather than doing this logic here, what we could do, since that's a single statement now, we can get rid of this logic. Okay. So now we're doing the same thing, but we're just saying if WX radar tilt is greater than -15, so in other words -5 through -15, then execute the next statement. And the next statement we're going to do is call. So we're going to say call, and it's going to say what do you want to call. So now we call the bespoke we created, this one right here, tilt deck call, and then hit OK, and there you go. So rather than having all that logic there, we can just do this, and it'll say if it's greater than -15, next execute this bespoke event, and this bespoke event is this one here, which will do this and this. Okay, so it'll execute those two statements. So we don't need the elaborate label and go to and all that kind of stuff. We can avoid having to code that, because the else next skip will go ahead and skip this and do nothing, which is what we want it to do. when it reaches the maximum of -15. So this is just a little, a bit cleaner, probably a little bit easier to understand, but then you also have to trace, you have to know what this call does, but it puts things into a more modular form. So if you're doing more elaborate programming on other controls, or that you wanted to control multiple things by one button or by one turn of the knob, you wanted to control, say, you had a lights dimmer knob, and you wanted to control 3 or 4 other dimmer knobs that would dim the lights, either MFD lights or whatever, and you wanted to control those all by one knob. That would be this. You'd use this approach, and you'd set up individual knobs, and then you would just call like a group knob, so you can have calls of calls of calls, and that way you make these if statements very specific and small. You don't have to keep adding all these go-tos and labels and all that kind of stuff and think about that logic. It just makes it a lot cleaner to execute. So now we've got that, and we can test this out here. Let's just see how our event's up. Yep, there you go. Test the bespoke, and you notice that this value is now decrementing correctly and matching the decrement there. And it'll just keep going through, and it should stop when it reaches -15. And sure enough, it stops. There you go. So now we want to, let's go ahead and do create a bespoke call for the increment. So let's go back to our increment here. Remember, this doesn't work quite correctly because we need the increment value, and the increment value, I believe, is this 81925. But we can just double check that by going and incrementing this here, and then taking a look in the list view over here, and sure enough, 81925. That's our increment. So let's go ahead and copy this. I'm going to say increment underscore call. And I'm going to get rid of this logic because we don't need it. The tilt we do need, but what we want to do is we want to add this value here, this event here, 81925. Let's go ahead and add that event. Move it up. So now we've created our bespoke call event. So let's go back to our actual increment event. Our increment bespoke here. And again, we keep this logic. The if logic is correct. Then we get rid of this. And then we go ahead and do a call. And we selected that bespoke we created, the increment call. Here we go. And we say OK. And voila. So now we say if the weather radar tilt value is less than 15, go ahead and do the next step, which is this, which will increment what we want to increment. And now increment will be both the knob and this value here. Else next skip, which means don't do anything. So it keeps things a lot cleaner this way. And let's go ahead and test our bespoke event. Make sure we're getting the right values, and sure enough, the knob is moving, and these values are moving. There we go. Alright, so we've defined our increment and decrement values. Bespokes. So let's go ahead and actually apply these to a knob. First thing, of course, as usual, I'm going to export this to make sure everything is saved. Okay, so we've saved that bespoke. Now let's go ahead and go and assign it to a RP. Okay. Let's do. Okay. Device 2. Now remember, this is from earlier. These are our button assignments for the weather. Now we're going to go to the rotary assignments. And over here, the tilt is the most left rotary knob. This one here. So let's go ahead and assign it clockwise, which will be the increment value. And we can do a search here, or we could just try and locate it manually. I think I might do a search because yeah, I will do a search. Okay, let's go ahead and do a search. And as you know, this is our thing we're searching for, increment. So shift _ T 50 _ WX _ tilt increment, and search. Alright, so we found two. This is the one we want to use. We don't want to use the call because, like I said, that's the module, the smaller or subset of what we want to do. This contains the if logic, so that's the one we want. And then we want to establish the anti-clockwise direction, which is basically the decrement direction. So we can put in our search again, and rather than inc, call it dec. Hit the old search button. There it is, decrement. So now we've assigned that to the rotary. I'm going to go ahead and do an export. Okay, so now that we've got our tilt, increment, and decrement assigned to the rotary, we can go ahead and test out the actual rotary here on the WXR tilt that I've got labeled here for this knob, the far left knob. So now if I turn this knob, we should get a tilting motion, and sure, there we go. We get decrement. We're going backwards, and it shouldn't let me go beyond -15. If you take a look at the detective over here, you can see that I'm capped out here at -15. And same if I increment here and I turn this knob, the tilt is incrementing all the way up to a positive value of 15. And if you note, you also get the 15 in here, which means it's actually working correctly. And there you go. That's the tilt control done. Alrighty, so we've got the tilt done. Let's go ahead and move on to the radar range. The weather radar range rotary here that has 5, 10, 20, 40, 80, 160, 320. Now I cheated a bit because I already have this, like I said, coded from before. So I'm going to take a look at my range option here, and we have a range increment. Okay. This is going to be very similar approach to how it worked with the tilt. There does appear to be some additional optimization we can do here. So let's go ahead and start this from scratch. First thing I'm going to do is move the control over here and take note of what I see over here in the scroll viewer. So let's go ahead and do that. So we've increased 10, 20, 40, 80, 160. That's about as far as it goes. And as you can see, as we incremented here, we had a WX radar range LVAR value of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So it looks like the maximum value is 5, and that represents 160 miles, nautical miles. So let's go ahead and decrement this. Alright, back to its lowest value of 0. So the radar range value of 0 indicates a 5 nautical mile setting. And if we take note, we have, when we were incrementing the range, we had an event 081921. So that was the increment event. And when we were decrementing the radar range, we had an event of 081920. So that's the decrement event. So this is going to be very similar to our other increment decrement. We're going to need 2 values. We're going to need to execute 2 statements, this event and the LVAR. So what we'll do is, like the prior one, we'll set up an event, a bespoke that can be called using the same if logic. So let's go ahead and create a new bespoke, underscore T50 underscore WX underscore range. I'm not going to call this range Inc. underscore call. Oops. Uppercase I. Okay, so that's my event name, WX range increment call. This is going to be the bespoke that we're going to call with our if logic. So what happens with an increment? Well, we go look over the scroll window here, and we know what happens with increment. What we can see happening with the increment over here is the radar range LVAR data increases by 1, and we have an increase event here. So let's go ahead and go to our fixed viewer that sorts by time, and let's go ahead and adjust this again. Now we're doing this so that we see our radar range show up over here, and if we double click on it, we can do a search, and sure enough, there it is. So we have our event. So let's go ahead, I'm going to go back to the scroll view here, and let's set the range to a, this is incrementing, so we're going to increase the range by 1 each time. Alright, and since we're increasing the range, or incrementing the range, we need to use our increment value for the range, which is here, the event 081921. So this is the event. I'm going to send that event. Okay, so this is our increment, and now let's go ahead and do our decrement. So we'll copy this. We'll copy this bespoke here, and we'll call it decrement call. So there's our dec call. Alright, so we've copied that bespoke. Now we want to edit this. We don't actually want to increase this by 1. We want to reduce it by 1. I'm not sure we can actually edit that, but let's see. No, we can't. Okay. So we're actually going to have to delete this. Select that and go set minus here because we're trying to decrement it. And I'm going to decrement it by 1. We don't want the 1921 because since we're decrementing, we want the 81920. So we're going to get rid of this one here, and we're going to add this one. the 81920. All right, so now we have our decrement and our increment call. These are going to be the bespokes that we're going to call. So we want to create a new bespoke now, and let's. I'm just going to copy this one, but rather than say call here, I'm just going to leave it for increment. And we're not going to use either one of these, so let's just go ahead and delete them. And delete. Now, as we increment, we know the maximum value for the radar range is going to be positive 5 here. So we want to set up our if logic. And we want to make sure that our radar range is selected there. So go if radar range is less than 5. Less than 5. Go ahead and increment the radar range. So we want to do our increment call here. So we're going to say call the bespoke we created just a little bit earlier here. The range increment call. And hit OK. Alright, so now if our radar range is less than 5, and remember 5 is actually the maximum value of 160. So if this is currently less than 5, it will go ahead and execute the next statement here. And this next statement is going to be the increase statement, which is the increase bespoke, which we've defined here. And that's going to increase the WX radar range by 1. And then it's going to send the 81921 event, which is the increase event for the for the range control button. Rotary, sorry, not button. Let's go back to our range increase here. And let's test this logic. We should be able to test that by doing the test bespoke event down here. And when we test this, we should see them show up over here. Oh, there you go. And we're increasing our radar range. And you can see this is matching up also to the 8080. Alright, so, and it shouldn't go beyond 160 because that's the maximum value, and it doesn't. So let's go ahead and copy this, because now we're going to set up a decrement, because we haven't done the decrement yet. So I'm going to say copy, and type in dec. Now this, we don't want any of these statements really, so let's just go ahead and delete them. Oh, actually, we do want to keep this one. I think we can edit this if here. Go edit, instead of less than, we basically want to say if the value is greater than 0, because 0 is the lowest value of 5 here, of 5 nautical miles. So if it's greater than 0, we want it to decrement. We don't want it to increment, so let's get rid of this. So we want to use that. So we say call our decrement range decrement call here, and hit OK. So now we have if the radar range is greater than 0, in other words it's greater than 5, go ahead and allow a decrement to happen. If it's not, then don't allow the decrement to happen. If it's not greater than 0, don't allow the decrement to happen. And let's go ahead and test this one out. So we're currently at the max here, so let's go ahead and test. And sure enough, you see it's decrementing to 20. And the range here is updating also. And down to 5, and it should stop there. Can't go below 5. Okay. So we've set up our radar range, increment and decrement. Now let's go ahead and export again. Remember, I always do this just in case something happens. You don't have to, but it's good practice. And we want to set the range to rotary. Let me see here. I've got WXR range knob, a rotary knob here is the second knob from the right. So that will be over here. And we want to do our clockwise direction as being the increment. So let's go ahead and locate our increment value. Now, if you want to do a shortcut, I don't know if we can, we can't really copy that. Anyway, type in the search. We don't want the tilt, we want the range decrement. I'm sorry, the range increment, because we're going clockwise. And there we are, the range inc. Remember, we call this one, not this one. This is the one that has the if logic, which will call this. But when you're assigning it to the control, you obviously want it with the if logic, because that controls, make sure that you don't have invalid values. Okay, so clockwise direction is increment direction. And now let's go ahead and do the anti-clockwise direction, which will be the decrement direction. Click on our search button. And we're searching for the DEC. DEC. And hit the old search button here, and there we go. And there's the decrement. Alright, so now we've assigned our rotary here, the increase and the decrease value. Let's go ahead and export this. And hit save. Now, when you're exporting these modules, you'll notice they have a dash and then a number after the dash. In my case, -2 means that's device 2. If you have many devices, you'll have more values here from 0 on upwards. So this particular RP48 is ID 2, so that's why I have 2 here. I'm going to say yes, go ahead and replace. So that's my export. Yeah, as you notice, this is device 2. That's why I had that -2 on the end of the export. Let's go ahead and over to prepared 3D, and let's test our actual range knob here. So we're going to increment it. And there we go. It's incrementing. Everything is updating. And it's stopping at 160 the max. Go ahead and decrement, and everything is being reduced or decrementing down to our minimum value of 5. So there you have it. Alright, so we've got the tilt set up, we've got the range set. Now we need to do our gain. Let's go ahead and do our gain control. And let's go over here. We're going to clear this scrolling view here because we want to see a fresh set of data arriving when I do the gain control here. So I'm going to go move this gain control, move it down to its minimum value, and move it back up to its maximum value. And as you can see, the screen does change. As I increase the gain control, I seem to be increasing the elements of more activity within the clouds, I guess. And we'll move it back down again. All right. So here are all the vents. Let's go ahead and clear this again. We'll start from afresh. All right. Back in prepared 3D. Let's go ahead and scroll this up. To its max value, and it would appear the max value is 85 or almost 85. Now let's go ahead and decrement this. Oops, there we go. Decrement this. With a -3. A little bit odd, but Anyway, what we can notice from this, here's the minimum value, and here's the LVARS event, WX radar gain. This is the event for decrementing, 081928. And if we scroll up here, we have 081929. This is when we were incrementing the radar gain value. Now, based on the data I'm looking at here, it looks to me like the values increment by 5 at a time. About 5 at a time. 49, 54, 59, 64. So that's what we're going to aim for, is an increment and decrement value of 5. So let's go ahead and we can do our neat little trick again. Go back to the fixed view. Let's move these up and down. That way we get our gain value here. I can just double click on the WX radar gain. It'll show up in the search. Got my item here. Don't have to worry about looking for it or searching for it. It's done automatically. That's a hugely handy feature. Prior to this, I have to keep doing a search and manually typing the values in, or copying and pasting. So this is really a huge benefit. Alright, so let's go ahead and set up our new bespoke events for gain, increment, and decrement. Alright, so let's go do the increment version, increment one first. T50 underscore WX underscore gain underscore inc. Okay, and this is going to be set up similar to the way we did all the range and the tilt. It's really very similar, just different LVARs and events that we're going to be using. So let's go ahead and set up. We're going to do another bespoke that we're going to call. So let's go ahead and set up that bespoke that we're going to call our call. Oops. I actually didn't want to do that, but I wonder if I can escape here. I may not be able to escape, so just remember what it was. T50 underscore WX underscore gain underscore inc underscore call. Alright, so here's where we want to set up the native events. So let's go back to our scroller here. And this WX gain, we've got that there. We said we're gonna increment by value of 5, so we're gonna go set plus, and we're gonna put a value of 5 in. And the incrementer is what value is that? Alright, so when we're incrementing, we want the event 081929. As you can see here, the event that increments by 24, 29, 34. So this is the event we want to do for increment. We'll go ahead and send that event. The order of these events sometimes matters, sometimes it doesn't. It really depends on the application, the aircraft. In this particular one, I like to do the send and then increment the value. Okay, so that's our increment. And now we need to do a decrement call, so I'm just going to copy this. Call it my deck. I'm going to delete both of these because I don't need them. And for decrement, the event was 081928, and as you can see, this was a decrement event. So that would be this one here. So I'm going to go ahead and send that. And the radar gain value, we're going to set minus here, so it's going to minus the value by 5 every time. Hit OK. Alright, so we've got our decrement event that we're going to be calling from our main deck, bespoke. Sorry, bespoke. So we've got those two set up. Let's just see, double check. Yep, WX gain increment call, deck increment call. So now I'm going to copy this again. This time I'm getting rid of the call here. Oops. Alright, so I'm creating a new deck here. We don't want these values. We want to delete these statements, I mean. And we want to go ahead and use our if statement again. Since we're doing the decrement, and since we know the minimum value appears to be -3, it's kind of odd, but for my purposes, I'm just going to call it 0. Let's go ahead and do an if. If the radar range value is greater than 0, then we can go ahead and decrement it. Yeah. Greater than 0. Alright, so if the WX radar gain is greater than 0, next, go ahead and we want to decrement, so we're going to call. This is the same process we've used in the other controls. Call our decrement gain here. And hit OK. Alright, so if the radar gain value is greater than 0, that means we're a positive value up here, then go ahead and allow the decrement to happen. If it's not greater than 0, then don't allow the decrement call to happen. Now let's go ahead and copy this and call it our increment. Oops. I forgot I had cat box on. There we go. Uh-oh. Oh, okay. Apparently we already had our increment or something. So here, this is going to be the same deal. We're going to say if the radar gain value is less than whatever its maximum value was, and over here the maximum value I think was looked to be about 85. So let's go ahead and put that in as a maximum gain value. So if it's less than 85, go ahead and call the increment bespoke that we created. There we go, increment call. Alright, so now this is going to say if the radar gain value is less than its maximum value of 85, then go ahead and allow the increment to happen. So let's just test this, see if we've got everything working. Oh, there we go. We can see our gain value going up, and we can see our image changing, the weather image reflection changing. And this should go all the way up to about 85 being its maximum value. Okay, well, in this case 89. So go ahead and test the decrement. Alright, let's go ahead and test decrement here. And as you can see, we're coming down to 0. There we go. So this appears to be working. And now we need to assign this to our gain knob. But first, as always, let's export the bespokes just in case. Keep everything safe. And now let's go back over here to our rotary, our RP48. I've got the gain defined as the second rotary to the left. Let's go ahead and assign that then. Clockwise, yep, that's the increase value. Let's hit our little search here. And we want to put in gain ink. And search. And that's the one we want. Remember, we don't want the call one. And let's set up the anti-clockwise. Put the search, and it's going to be the gain deck. Search. There's the gain deck. And that's that. That's that one created. So let's go ahead and export this. Save. Yes. Alright, so we've got that saved. Let's go ahead and actually test the control over here. So when I say adjust the gain here, I should be adjusting it. Yep, there it is. And if I reduce the gain, should be reducing it. There you go. So that's the gain defined. And now one last item, and that's going to be the brightness. So let's go ahead and quickly do that. As you notice, these particular knobs, there's a very similar pattern on how they operate. So it's after a while you'll become more attuned and faster at doing these. Okay, so Alright, so we've done that. Let's go ahead and do our brightness. And the first thing we want to do before we create our bespokes, I'm going to clear this list. Go and prepare 3D. I'm going to adjust the brightness knob to its maximum and minimum values. As you can see, the display is getting darker and lighter. That's the minimum value. So here's the LFR event, WX radar bright, and the minimum value appears to be negative 1.3. Let's go ahead and see what the and also as I was decrementing that, you can see the decrement event is 081926. Let's go ahead and increment this. To 100. Okay, so I'm going to make the assumption that brightness here goes from a value of 0 to 100, or thereabouts. As we increase the brightness, this is the increase event here, 081927. And let's just go ahead and do the same process as we've done before. So I'm going to create a new bespoke, and I'm going to make this the call ones. Okay, so it's going to be underscore T50 underscore oops underscore WX underscore bright. I'm just going to call it BRT underscore ink underscore call. Remember, this is what we're going to be calling to increase the brightness. So what we want is the WX radar bright. Now we can either type the search in here manually, or I'm lazy and I go to the fixed view and just make a few few changes here, and then I get this WX radar bright. Double click and automatically searches it for me. And then I'll go back to scroll view, and the increment event says 081927. So I'll go ahead and send that. Alright, and the WX radar brightness, we want to increase the value by, let me see, we're going to go between 0 and 100. And the increments here look kind of a bit odd. They look like they're incrementing at a value of 6.25 about? I don't really understand that, but let's go ahead and we'll emulate the same process. Probably just a matter of segmenting up the animation, but let's go ahead and increment that by 6.25. 6.25. Okay, so that's our call increment bespoke. Let's go ahead and copy this and make a decrement one. Now when we decrement this, we want to be, what are we using for decrement value? Is 081926. So let's get rid of these in our decrement. We don't need them. Get rid of that. And we're going to send that. Yep, so that's our decrement. You're setting the actual value, so I'm going to set minus here. And it's going to be 6.25. Alright, so that's our decrement. And we've got our decrement and our increment call set up for the brightness. Now we want to set up the conditional, making sure we don't go beyond our range of 0 and 100. Okay, so let's create, well, actually I'm going to copy this, get rid of the call, delete these since we've got them in our call statement, and then we're going to do the old trusty if. Since we're incrementing here, we basically want to say increment if the value is less than 100. So increment if less than 100. Alright, so it's going to increment if the WX radar brightness value is less than 100. Next else, which will be what we want to be our increment. So call our increment bespoke. And there's that one. And hit OK. So that's that one set up. If WX radar brightness is less than 100, then next will be say OK, increment that, and we'll increment the brightness. If it's not, then I'll just skip it and nothing will happen. Alright, so let's copy this and make it our decrement. Do our decrement one. Dec. And let's remove both of these. And this one we're going to say if radar value is greater than 0, then go ahead and allow a decrement to happen. And that means let's call the decrement. Alright, so there we have that. So if the radar value brightness is greater than 0, that means we can reduce it more, then call the decrement, then next, which will call the decrement value, or it'll skip it completely and do nothing. Alright, now we can test that. Okay, this is our decrement value, as you can see. There we go, we test our increment here. And as you can see, the brightness is increasing up to a maximum value of 100. And let's go ahead and test the brightness decreasing. Okay. Now let's go ahead and assign this to a rotary. In my case, the brightness is going to be assigned to the last to far right rotary knob over here, WRX brightness. Actually, this should be WXR brightness, the label error. So let's go ahead and clockwise is going to be our increasing direction. So let's go ahead and, or let's just search for our BRT Inc. BRT underscore Inc. And there we go. And our anti-clockwise direction will be decreasing, so let's go ahead and search for the decreasing brightness deck. search, and there it is. All right, we've assigned those. Let's go ahead and export this. I should get on here. I forgot to export this as well. Let's see. Again, when I do these exports, it's just a precautionary thing. You don't have to do them, but if you run into any crashes, you'll be glad you did. Okay, so we've got it assigned to the rotary. Let's go ahead and go into Prepared 3D here and actually test the knob here. This is my WXR brightness knob. And let's see if it actually works. Yes, it does. I think I like it right about there. So that actually is it. We've covered all the controls on the Milviz Rex radar, and we've mapped them to an mapped them all to an RP48, and mapped them to their knobs, and mapped the rotary switch to individual buttons, which is probably the most challenging bit in this particular tutorial. We can just confirm those buttons are still working, and they are indeed. Test button. Yep, and go ahead and go back to the thunderstorm button. So that's kind of the end of part 2 of my tutorial. It's probably a fairly lengthy one. I hope everybody can make it through the end.